So what's going on, programmers? This is a new Python programming series, and in this programming series we're going to be talking about object-oriented programming and Python. In today's video we're going to be looking at classes and instances. Now I'm going to be showing you how to create a class, how to create an instance of a class or an object, how to initialize a class, and basically how to create a class function. Now I want to look at a class, or I will say the class is actually a blueprint for objects because it defines how an object is going to be created. Now a class is used for defining, should I say, a blueprint for homogeneous objects that could be created. So I would go ahead and create the first class. So to create a class, you're going to type the class keyword and you're going to state the name of the class. So I'm going to be giving a student for this class, and I'm just going to state in a pass for this particular class. Now I can create a class instance by saying I'm giving stud1, that's the first student, is going to be student. Okay, now open and close parentheses. That's great. Now what I've basically done here is I've created a class here using the class keyword and the name of the class. Now this pass is basically telling us that this class is not implemented yet and we don't have any implementation for that class. Now the first one we've created here, we've assigned this is an instance of the class student, which is what? Stud1. Now this stud1 can have many properties. Now if you're thinking about students, you know, students have names, they have the ID, maybe the registration number given by the school, they might have a last name, they might have an email, and so on. But for this first tutorial, we're going to be keeping it basic to just your first name and your last name. So we could give stud1 to be equal a property of stud1, that's his first name or her first name. So stud1.first name is going to be equal to, let's say, James. And then we're going to give another property, stud1.last name is equal to should I say Alexander. So yeah, so we've just gone ahead to create some properties for this particular instance of the class, which is the last name property and the first name property of stud1, and that is all accessible because we've created that under a class or as an instance of a class. So I can go ahead and print stud1 dot first name, and let me just do it on the same line. So stud1 dot last name also. So once I run this bunch of codes, you would see that we actually have two of these names printed here. That is the first name James and the last name Alexander, which is the name of this candidate that we've created here. Now if I want to create a second student, I may go ahead and let me make this smaller. I may go ahead and say stud2 is equal to student, which is creating an instance of that class again. I can see stud2 dot first name we can't type today is equal to, we can give that as anything, and we can say stud2 dot last name is equal to Mary. Okay, so you could basically see that we actually repeating a bunch of steps. And how can we automate that? So once we're creating a class, we can actually pass in the first name and the last name. Now that is where the initialization of the class comes in. Now we can initialize a class using the underscore init function, and I'm going to clear out on this stud2 and show you how that is done. Now to initialize the class, we're going to use the def underscore init underscore. Now def init, and it's going to take the first parameter as self, and that is for self-reference for the particular object that is being created at the moment. For example, if we're creating stud1, self is going to be stud1 for stud1. Okay, that might be confusing, but I'm going to take my time to explain this. Now I'm going to go to the next line. Now the init function runs immediately a class is created. It's more like a main function for other programming languages like Java and C#. So this actually runs immediately a class is created. Now just to show you how that is true, we're going to print created for this. Now once stud1 is created, that is going to run. Let me comment out this lines of code. So once I put Ctrl B to run this on, you can see that we have created here. So let's try to see what self actually is. So once I print self also, which is what we passed in here for self-reference, you could see that it is a student object at this. So it's just telling us the memory location of that. So we can actually know that self is actually different. Okay. So that is what we are going to get. If we go ahead and create a stud2 to be equals to student, okay, you could see that it's going to be printed twice. And these memory locations will be slightly different because they are for different objects. So the self is not static for a class, it's just based on the object that is being passed, or the class instance that is being passed in. Okay, so I hope that is not confusing for you. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the comment section below and I'll be glad to answer them. Okay, so how do we automate the creating of these names, that the first name and the last name, or the properties of our class? Now we're going to go inside of this init function and we're going to collect a first name and we're going to collect a last name. Okay, so this time around, you can assign student1 first name by saying student1.first name is equal to James. But now we've been given the memory location as self, so we can actually access any of those should I say class instances or objects. So instead of saying student1 or student2, we're going to use the self dot first name. Now it's going to be equal to the first name which was passed into this function, and finally self dot last name is going to be equal to what? The last name which we've passed in to this function. So once we're creating this student class, we actually have to feed it in with the first name and the last name. So now once we're creating student1, we're going to give student1 is going to be, I think, James Alexander, James Alexander, and student2 is going to be me, Victor Isaac. So I should do the V with an uppercase. So once we've done this, I could go ahead and uncomment this line here, which is printing student1 dot first name and student1 dot last name, and we could also see student2 dot first name and student2 dot last name there. So once I run this, you could see James Alexander and Victor Isaac printed out for you, and that is great. So we've learned how to create a class, how to create instances of a class, how to initialize a class with values or variables, which will later turn into the properties of that actual objects that it's been created. So this is great so far, and I think we've done a great job. Now for a class function, we're going to create a basic function, say full name. So this full name function is going to get the full name of that student. So I'm going to go into my student class and I'm going to define a function, say full name, and the first argument is going to take is self. Now once I go into the definition of this function, I want to return self dot first name plus, now I want to give a space, then plus self dot last name. So that is basically how to create a function in a class. I can try to print student1 dot what? Full name, but we have to use this open and close parentheses because this is actually a function and not a property. We can also define that as a property. So if I run this, you would see James Alexander is student1's full name, which is actually pretty good for what we've done. You can also still accept that as a property by saying self dot full name is equal to self dot. Basically, we could just copy what we have here and we could get away with that. So, and now instead of saying full name, we can now go ahead and remove this open and close parentheses, and you will still get the same output. So you can go ahead and play around with classes and see what you get into. A quick reminder of what we've done today: how to create a class, how to initialize a class with this, and we're basically seeing how to create a function in a class. Now in the next tutorial, we're going to be talking about class variables. Please, if you really enjoyed this video, you can leave a like and a sub, and you can also share this video with whoever you think these videos might be very useful to. And I'll be seeing you guys in the next tutorial.